Welcome back to a mindful moment. We're glad you're joining us.
Hi, everybody.
So, I'm getting ready for an upcoming workshop that we're doing, and it's turned into something that's really made me reflect a lot on mindfulness. But it's about how we can disagree with people mindfully. And I was looking for a video, like just to kind of show what do you want to call it? Unproductive conversations, where someone is talking over other people or yelling or worse. And I had to stop watching the videos. Like after about the 10th or 12th viewing of people behaving nastily, I was like, oh, this is really at the heart of kind of what's wrong in our country right now. Right. So it really kind of took me back. I thought I was just going to zip through and come up with the content. And instead I had to stop.
You went down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. 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 It's really the heart of what I walked away with. I really did have to step away for a couple of hours. It was getting depressing. And then I really thought about it and I realized that it's not about the issues. Like everyone thinks it's about the issues. It's about human behavior and our ego, right? We enter these conversations already ready to fight or to prove or to convince someone that they need to agree with us. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
If we just shifted our mindset to it's a learning opportunity, like you don't have to change just because you don't agree with someone, but if we would be more open, maybe to just going into a conversation with the intent to learn.
hmm I think we've been so conditioned to look at it as confrontation or fights or arguments instead of conflict that we either want to avoid it, right? So we keep it at arm's distance as much as we can. And then when we know we can no longer avoid it anymore, now we're preparing in our minds, okay, this is what I'm going to say. I don't care what they say back. If they say this, I have a prepared answer because your ego wants to win always. And because we have that mindset, none of them really turn into conflicts. They're often very negatively charged arguments. No one walks away feeling happy and no one really actually wins, right?
And you said conflicts, I think you mean conversations, right? Because it does turn into a conflict,
Yes. Yes.
which is it made me start thinking like just historically with your significant others or your teenagers or whatever it is, that instead of just trying to understand their viewpoint, we've lost that art. Instead it's we want to obliterate their viewpoint. And that's why most of the arguments in your household, that's why the political landscape is so terrible. There's so many taboo topics. You can't talk about it. You can't bring it up at all because everyone's on one side or another. And I think it's important for us just as citizens to be able to discuss, to have a discourse about things so that we can learn. So one of the things that struck me, which of course is politics, is I realized I would love to understand, and I'm not trying to offend anyone. I don't care what your political party is. But for me, for instance, the reason that I have a lot of trouble with Trump is because of his misogyny, his comments he makes about women or denigrating women or whatever, all the stuff to do with the female gender. And so then I'm surprised in reading through all of the different polls and different political heads talking about the increase in people of color. So like one that is surprising to me is the number of Mexican individuals who are claiming that they're going to vote for Trump. And he has said such horrible things about them that in my mind, I'm like, why would you be interested? And that would be a conversation. Like I would love to have a conversation just to understand, because what I'm doing there is I'm applying how I feel about what he says about me, that of course someone else would feel the same way, when in fact, there are obviously other issues that are bigger than that for other people. Am I making sense here?
Oh, 100% you're making sense. And, I'm very, I'll lay it out on the line, but I'm very in the middle when it comes to politics. And I don't like either candidate. And for me, it is so difficult too for me to understand the same kind of thing where, I live in a very Republican county. I live in Orange County, and there's a lot of people that are very right wing, and there's a few that are left. There's not a whole lot in the middle, or if they are, they're too afraid to say so because it, like you said, it turns into this. We don't know how to talk anymore. We don't know how to like get down to it.
Oh,
And I have the same problem. One of my biggest problems is women's rights. And I just can't wrap my head around it that we've come so far and now we're back where we were. And I just don't understand as a woman. That's what's very difficult for me. It's hard for me to understand how you can support someone that is not pro women's rights. And wherever you lean on that scale, I mean, you can be pro women's rights, but you may not agree with abortion. That's the
Right.
other thing that I think is so frustrating for me. It's like, it's this complete polarization that if you are voting on the right, you agree with every single thing on that platform. No, same
Yeah.
thing with people on the left.
Yeah.
If you don't have to agree with every single thing, and that's kind of why I hate the whole two-party thing. It's like, well, I'm in the middle. There's other things I don't agree with, but to get back to the point, it's that I would love to sit down and have a conversation with someone and not have the vitriol and like this horrible, mean conversation where it's fighting and attacking. I want to understand. I want to see through that person's eyes and I want them to tell me, like, well, this is why I think that. But that
Yeah.
never happens. Why doesn't that happen?
Again, it's because we've really allowed or been conditioned. I mean, I don't know how exactly, but we are at a point where it's only about winning and losing. It's only black and white. It's only one extreme or the other. And we can't get anything done with that. I mean, that's the frustrating part to me. I never had a problem in the past. I could have conversations with people about political differences or religious differences, like again, all the taboo topics. If both parties, me and another person, already had the understanding that we're just trying to understand the other side. It doesn't mean I'm going to change to the other side. It means I want to understand it better. And I agree with you. It's like everything else. Now there is no gray area. You are either for this and against this, and it's all one big package. So whether it's about discrimination or whether it's about economics or whether it's about politics, I mean, it doesn't really, I don't think it makes a difference anymore. I swear, I'm amazed that it can be about the dumbest, littlest things,
Yeah.
right? It can be about somebody makes one comment and everybody jumps on it and attacks. And it attacks from that perspective of this side or this side.
Like I'm just recalling being in debate in high school, and it was one of my favorite things to do because we could hear other people's ideas, we could try to tell them ours. Nobody was getting like super heated about it. It was a educated debate. But now
Yeah.
think about it. What are the only debates that we ever see as the general public? The presidential debates, which are disgusting to watch. I cannot even turn it on. It's so
Yeah.
ugly. And so that's what we have to look at. That's our example of debate. Well, what do you think the masses are going to do if that's what they think debate is? If that's what they see as, well, this party's trying to convince this party. You don't have to convince the other party that you're right. I
Yeah.
think that's where maybe we're going wrong, right? I don't need you to agree with me. I don't need my neighbor to think the same thing as I do. I still like them. They're still a good person. I don't
Right.
need them to think the same thing. But we've gotten to this point where everybody has to think the same thing as we do, or else they are evil.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is that stark. I mean, I think that's what I think that's what was really bothering me when I was watching all those videos. It's like, why are you fighting with each other over this? Like, you know what I mean? It's just so anyway, so I was trying to think like how in the world do I address that in a workshop, right? Get a bunch of people together and bring up really touchy topics. Ooh, that sounds fun. So, but then I started thinking like it's really a mindful act, right? So I'm going to try like to start out with, just breathing and being calm and then just talking about how do we learn, period. We learn by reading or talking or listening or what we're doing is just hearing something from our side and going with it. So I'm going to try with the how do you change your intent? Right. So entering a conversation where the intent is not to overpower, run over, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
all the things that feels like happens now. And instead, just really clearing your mind again, anchoring yourself with deep breathing, reminding yourself that you don't have to change anything about yourself, that this is no different than like, I watch documentaries. I don't agree with everything that comes up in a documentary, but I always learn something that, I didn't know before about, whatever it is. So I'm kind of looking at it that way. Like, can we practice this and see if we can enter into a civil conversation and both walk away having learned something, even if we still disagree.
Yeah. It's very hard. I mean, I just encountered this with a discussion with my husband about his hearing. And it was very difficult for me to not be angry just because I have been dealing with it for years, right? And I was getting frustrated. And it basically just boils down to the fact that he doesn't ever hear what I say. And I'm tired of repeating myself. So it turned into an argument. But mid argument, I think we both discovered that, oh, wait, there is a different side to this that I'm not seeing. And the part I wasn't seeing was that it's harming his pride, that he doesn't want to have to wear a hearing aid because he's early 50s. And I think that in his mind, it probably makes him feel older than he is. And so it's kind of damaging his pride a little bit. His ego is in danger. And for him, I think he's frustrated with me that I'm frustrated, that I would snap and be like, didn't you hear me? And so, it's great though that mid argument that we could both go, okay, okay, I can kind of see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
And I think that's where things are going wrong. So yeah, I think that it's important that if we can use that mindfulness and just go, okay, this is going way off course. I need to stop for a second. I need to take a deep breath. I need to try to understand why the person is so angry. And maybe we can put it back on track.
Again, with the politics and with me questioning, like, why would somebody who gets denigrated want to vote for that person? I'm making it personal about them, and you know what I mean. Like we have to remember too that we are putting in our own assumptions and our own made up stories. Of course, everyone feels like me. No, they don't, and that's okay. But I again think when I've started kind of researching this a little bit to see, and there are many things affecting this country right now and we don't have a big choice. We have one of two people that most people are not super excited about.
Yeah.
But it's only through discussing the issues that we can figure out, like, maybe there is that middle ground. Maybe there is a compromise so that we can go, oh, I see why that's important to you. You know what? Actually, that aspect of it is important to me too. Or it may be, okay, I really appreciate you sharing that information with me. I may not agree with any of it, but it doesn't mean I have to then. I love that you said they're still human. Everybody, we are all human beings. There's no reason to punish someone for a belief, right? And that's what it feels like.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many facets that this could go down, religion and politics and so many different things. And, we bring up politics because that is kind of in the forefront right now. And it's difficult. It's difficult for me because I do have a lot of friends that are far removed from my political beliefs. And I do have to keep in mind, and I think maybe most of us could keep in mind that not everybody has the same amount of information when they're coming to their conclusions, right? So, and there's no judgment there. I want to preface with that. Some people get their news from one source. And a great example of it is the Trump case with E. Jean Carroll. There is a large amount of voters on the Republican side that didn't even know that he was convicted of sexual assault. Now, I'm not faulting them for that because if they're getting their news from one source and that news source never reports on it, how on earth would they know? So I think that's where it needs to turn into that learning conversation instead of being accusatory, like, how could you not know that? Be like, oh, well, where do you get your news? Oh, have you seen this report? I'll forward you a few articles. Just read them if you can. Something like that where we seek to maybe educate the other person and we want to be educated by the other person. So it's not this like, I have all the answers and I'm just going to give them to you because obviously you don't have any of them. It's, I have some answers. Do you have some answers to provide to me? Because I would love to see how you're seeing this. And it has been eye opening for me because I do somewhat understand, where a lot of this support for Trump comes from, because I think they ignore a lot of the noise. And what they like about it is that they don't like our government, period. And he is going to be this, savior in their eyes of toppling the way the government works right now. And if that's the way it's going to happen, then that's the way it's going to happen. I don't agree with it, but I can understand it. And it's helpful for me. It's been very helpful in my mindfulness journey because now I am really able to not judge my friends for, the way that they feel politically, but it's still very hard. It's challenging, but it has been a good test for me.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think, I mean, again, not it's not just about politics, but that's so in our face right now. And I think most people in this country don't believe our government is working well,
Mhm.
right? And again, we don't have a lot of choices, but I think if we were having the conversations, that we could talk about it, like I want to understand, why somebody is happy that Roe versus Wade was overturned. Okay, but why? And it could be a multitude of reasons. That's the
Mhm.
point. I don't understand why you would want to give away or give up a freedom and be happy about it, or a choice, right? And it's about choice to me. It's not pro or anti. It's just it would be nice if you had the choice. But again, obviously there's a divide on that. And then instead of having the conversation so that I could understand better, we just aren't allowed to talk about it. You're either pro-abortion or anti-abortion. And it's like, no, there's a middle in there. Again, that
Yeah.
has, and like for me, it's complicated. It's not even about the abortion itself. It's about the unfairness of a woman being restricted versus the other half that makes a baby not having any accountability. So
Right.
how is it fair? For career, for money, for all kinds of things that have nothing to do with the actual act itself. I bet you there's a lot of people that have, again, on that spectrum, different reasons for why they believe what they believe. And I've heard some people say it doesn't matter. It's nobody's business. But if it's what's driving the change in laws and how we are allowed to live, then it is our business to
Yeah.
understand each other better so that we can come up with better compromises instead of it being so extreme.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean that boils down to a lot of the laws going on, a lot of these very heated debates going on about immigration, about women's rights, about diversity and inclusion and all of these things. And it's just oh, it's exhausting.
It
Yeah.
is. It is. And I think another thing too is what's happened to in media, in the news, because there's definitely the right wing, and it's the same problem on the left, right? They go overboard the other way. And I
Mhm.
had read something years ago about they started doing that because they were trying to counterbalance. And it's like, oh my gosh. And same thing with radio. Conservative radio, takes over the airwaves. And so then they're like, we got to get a liberal show on. Well, how about we just go back to having news that isn't slanted or
Yeah.
biased, where you're just giving us information? But that requires a lot of work, honestly. So you were saying like some people just may not even be informed. It's hard to stay informed in a balanced way of any kind because most of it is slanted one way or the other. So I have to go to multiple sources
Mhm.
anytime I'm really trying to understand an issue and weed out the. I just saw something yesterday briefly on CNN. Person made like a snarky remark. I think it was probably about Trump, and it strikes me. It's like, why you don't need to include that language, when you're talking about this. So I guess I'm an equal opportunity offendee. I am not happy with most reporting on these hot topic issues because I can't tell for sure if it's just for show, if it's just for politics, if it's just this whole idea of, well, they said this, so we have to counter it. And I find that frustrating. So I try to take a mindful approach to any kind of news, which is, okay, I heard it from this source. Let me check another source. Just, that I might think is more neutral or maybe leans the other way a little bit so I can get the bigger picture. But most people don't have time to do that. I have time to do that because it's my job.
Yeah, it's interesting because I do read the news right now. I try to stay away from like the death and war and all of those kind of topics, but I am pretty closely following politics right now, and it's so interesting because the way that the media behaves on wherever you're getting your information, whatever platform you're getting it from, is that when you read something, the algorithm goes, oh, they want more of this. And so I follow a lot of different news sources, and I want to see what MSNBC is saying. I want to see what Fox News is saying. I want to see what these complete opposite, leaning news agencies are saying. And then I find the one that's in the middle and I read that one. But it's interesting because then if I read one that's from NBC, then my entire feed is just, Mother
Yep.
Jones, it's NBC, it's MSNBC, it's CNN. And then if I read one thing from Fox, then all of a sudden everything on my feed is from Fox. And it's so important. Oh, gosh, I wish I could just like get rid of all the other ones and only have the neutral, but it's just so important for everyone out there to really do their homework when it comes to this stuff, because even in something like ABC News, which I think they're left, but I don't think they're quite as far left as like MSNBC, the language, like you said, the headline will be, Trump terrified of not making the bond. And it's like, do you actually know that? You probably don't actually know that. So let's take out that language. We don't need all the adjectives in there. We need the facts.
Yeah, yeah. And that's harder and harder to come by those. Many people don't realize the algorithm problem. They think they're just seeing, if you open your phone and it's all, headlines from, like you said, like say from the left, then you think then, well, then that's what's happening,
Yeah.
right? Because everything you see is along those same lines. And some people don't realize it's because that's all they're looking for. What did you look at? That's how they make their money with like social media and anything, any online platform or TV. That's advertising dollars, right? But once you start that, you're going to get fed more like that. You're not going to get fed to, opposing views. You're going to just keep getting the gist of whatever you had just looked at, which it's like confirmation bias. Oh,
It's just,
there's 15 articles in a row. It must be true.
yeah.
No, you're just seeing one slice that a computer, hello AI, a computer has said, oh, this kept their attention for 10 seconds. Give them more. That's all it is.
Yeah, it's exactly. And that's the same thing with social media. So if you're a younger person and you're getting your news from social media, which is the trend, because it's just a little snippet, all it is a headline,
Yep.
and that's all you're going to see. You're just going to see something that's confirming exactly what you just saw.
Yeah.
So I really encourage people to seek out information on other news sources. What are some recommendations you have? I do go with Reuters. Al
Mhm.
Jazeera is a good one.
Yep.
What other ones do you?
I go to BBC.
Mhm.
Right. I do find, I mean, I hate to say this, but stepping out of our country helps because you're getting a different perspective.
Yeah.
The BBC just doesn't get excited about anything. It's very dry, but there's not that, sort of pejorative language
Mhm.
or headline grabbing. It's just this, I'm not saying it's exciting, but I will check there.
Hey, news isn't supposed to be exciting. But I think we've
Well,
forgotten that it's not entertainment, it's actually news, right?
well, yeah, unfortunately though, what about 10 years ago, most of the news divisions were eaten up by the entertainment
Yep.
divisions of the networks. And that's where this started. So instead of us throwing more and more up there, that's at one extreme or the other, it'd be lovely if somebody just said, hey, let's just like cover the news without our own opinions, blasted in there. And then you can have guests on that represent different sides if you want to or whatever. But I think as we keep deteriorating when it comes to communication, mindfulness may be the only really, I want to say reasonable technique that could actually start shifting those conversations. Because if you're communicating mindfully, that means you're not being judgmental, you're not jumping to assumptions, you're respectful, you try to reach for empathy for another person. There's nothing about it that isn't helpful when it comes to communicating. And it'd be nice if we could just kind of turn the dial down on everyone's reactivity.
I was just
And
going to say this ties into our episode last week about, reacting versus responding, and that when you go into something that could turn into an argument or a disagreement or a conflict, you know, go into it with the mindset that this is going to be a productive conversation. We want
yeah,
conversation in there. And when we can pause and be mindful and take that deep breath, and even if we veered off course like I did with my husband in that argument, if we can just bring it back to center and go, okay, where are we going with this? This isn't going where we wanted it to.
every conversation has an outcome. What's missing is the intention when you enter the conversation.
Mhm.
And that's is going to completely alter whatever the outcome is. So again, if you think of it as, you want to go into the conversation to learn something new. And maybe you will absolutely strongly disagree with whatever you learned that was new, but No one's asking you to change. You're just learning. And again, I think it is this control thing. It's like, no, I'll talk to you, but the point is going to be to change you.
Yeah. We have the very unhealthy relationship with power.
Yeah.
And that I think really stems from, our egos and kind of the way that this country has been, brought about. And,
Yeah.
but if we start to realize that we don't have power over anybody, only ourselves, right? And I know that might sound like an elementary idea, but it's true. Then we can go into that conversation really understanding that, well, I'm not here to gain power over anybody. I have power over me. I can only change me. I can't change anybody else. I would like for them to understand where I'm coming from. They don't need to agree with me.
Well, I think it's a pretty alien concept today. So I would encourage anyone who wants to try it to start small. Don't jump into a discussion, your first discussion, like on a topic like, I don't know, abortion or immigration or any of these things that just tend to just throw people just into the stratosphere. But, maybe look around your personal life a little bit first. Like, do you have a relative that you don't talk to a lot because they are on the opposite sides? Like maybe that's the place to start. And you start with understanding that you're learning this right now, maybe for the first time, that you could have this kind of a conversation, but they may not know. So it's also that first conversation. So I'm saying maybe a lighter topic than the big ones we're talking about. But if you called up your uncle who definitely disagree with on a lot of issues, and if you said, I would love to chat with you about XYZ, not because I want to change anything about what I believe, but I do want to understand you more. And then if they start with the trying to, push you or change you or, gets out of you just remind them, you know what, that's not what I want this conversation to be about. I just really want to understand you more. I want to listen to why you feel that way. You might have to encourage someone like that at first, because I mean, I know just in general with mindfulness, when you make the switch, like I did, I made my switch kind of quickly. Then other people are like, what's wrong with you? So you may have to remind them a few times, but it's worth it. And if you can do it with someone and maybe not on the biggest topic, then you can look at it like, okay, this is now a path you're on. Let's try another conversation, maybe with a coworker who, you barely talk to because you disagree with them so strongly. Like, oh, what about just changing that intention? I want to understand her or him more because they seem like a nice person, but I don't know why in the world they act this way or they do this. You know what I mean? If you have those thoughts, that's telling you you're judging that person, and there's an opportunity there to understand that person instead.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of this does stem from judgment, if we can eliminate that out of the picture. But I think you might be honestly very pleasantly surprised if you began a conversation in that way. I guarantee the other person's going to be like, wait, what? You want to talk? I'll talk. So, and people do love to share, their beliefs and where they're coming from. And it doesn't have to turn into the argument.
And these are definitely conversations to have in person,
Yes.
not on social media, not on, not, not texting, not
Not text, no.
that's what's really, I think, caused this to explode. But they can post these things and they don't feel there's any repercussion.
Hmm.
And there is. We're damaging relationships where, I mean, I've got relatives that we don't talk to anymore because I was seeing them as just so unreasonable. Well, the unreasonableness was because they won't listen to just hear that, they want to change. I'm wrong, they're right, blah, blah, blah.
Hmm.
So I think if we could just start easing into this a little bit, maybe we could start healing some of those relationships where we did not have this problem before.
Yeah. And if they don't want to talk, if they don't want to have the conversation, then that's okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. You know, then we're just going to stay where we're at. And
Yeah.
maybe later down the line, they'll change their mind.
I just think it's worth considering. And I haven't decided what meditation I'll write yet, but we'll post it once I come up with my brilliant idea. Definitely. Oh, and we'll be at the podcast conference
Oh, that's
this
right.
week in LA. It's in town this time. So we're hoping that we come away all rejuvenated and have lots of new ideas and better understand the changes in the industry. So if there's anything interesting comes up, we'll share it with you next time.
Yeah, please leave us a comment or follow us on social media. The links are in our profile and can't wait to talk with you again soon.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.
This podcast is part of the Airwave Media Podcast Network. Visit airwavemedia.com to listen and subscribe to other great shows. Visit our website, amindfulmoment.com, to access podcasts, scripts, and reading recommendations. A Mindful Moment is hosted by Teresa McKee and Melissa Sims. This podcast is produced by Work to Live Productions. Thank you for tuning in.